There are people who spend their entire lives looking for a place that finally feels like home. Not a house, not a city, not a relationship. Something deeper than that. A place where your spirit can breathe without shrinking, where your mind can rest without pretending, where your heart doesn't feel like it's always translating itself for the world. And if you're here right now, it's likely because you've carried that feeling for a long time. The sense that you don't fully belong to the noise around you. You can walk through crowds, you can smile, you can participate. You can even do everything right, and still feel like you are standing slightly outside of life, as if you were built for a different atmosphere. And the hardest part is how invisible it is. People can't see it on you, so they assume it's nothing. They label you as shy, intense, distant, dramatic, hard to please. Meanwhile, you're fighting something you can't explain with ordinary words, this strange spiritual friction that appears whenever you try to settle into what everyone else calls normal. Certain environments drain you like they take something from you. Certain conversations feel hollow, like your soul is starving while your mouth is forced to speak. And sometimes, you leave a room and feel exhausted for no clear reason, as if your energy absorbed something you never agreed to carry. So when I say, Nostradamus' prophecy of the one country is only for those chosen with the Mark M and Crescent moon, I'm not asking you to believe in a fantasy. I'm asking you to recognize a pattern. Because whether you see that mark literally on your hands or you feel it as an inner signature, you already know what it means to be set apart. You already know what it means to be pulled away from the crowd without choosing it. You already know what it means to crave truth more than entertainment, silence more than stimulation, depth more than performance. And that's why this message doesn't land like a story to you. It lands like recognition. Most people hear one country and imagine borders, flags, a physical nation rising somewhere on the world stage, but chosen ones hear something else. They hear a spiritual concept, a place that isn't geographic, but internal. A country made of alignment, clarity, and truth. A homeland of the awakened. A realm you enter not by traveling, but by becoming. Because there is a kind of spiritual citizenship that can't be given by governments or crowds. It is earned through refinement, through separation, through the painful seasons where you were forced to let go of what drained you, just to keep what was sacred in you alive. And this is why it feels like it's only for you. Not because you are better than anyone else, but because not everyone can hear this frequency. Some people are still comfortable in illusion. Some people still want noise more than truth. Some people still call distraction a life. But the ones marked by the M, by the Crescent, by the inner pattern of sensitivity and discernment can't stay asleep forever. They feel the shift. They sense when the atmosphere changes. They notice when the world becomes more persuasive, more exhausting, more performative, and they realize that what they've been craving all along wasn't popularity or belonging, it was a return to something pure. So in this series, we're not chasing fear, we're decoding meaning. We're going to unfold what one country really points to, why only the marked ones recognize it, and what it demands from you right now. Because if you've been feeling the pressure increase, the intolerance for noise, the urge to withdraw, the need for clarity, it may be because you're being called toward that country already. Not someday, not later, now. And if these words feel like they're describing you with uncomfortable accuracy, stay close because the next part will connect the dots in a way that makes your entire pattern make sense. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next, because this is one of those messages that tends to find you exactly when you're ready to hear it. When you hear the phrase, one country, your mind naturally looks outward. It tries to locate it on a map, attach it to a flag, connect it to politics, geography, borders. But prophecy, especially the kind people associate with Nostradamus, is rarely about handing you a neat location you can point to. It speaks in symbols because symbols travel deeper than facts. Symbols bypass the surface mind and speak directly to the part of you that already knows. And that is why the one country can feel so strange at first, because it's not primarily describing a place you move to. It's describing a place you enter. In this context, One country is less like a nation and more like a state of spiritual belonging, a realm of alignment, a homeland of clarity, a kind of inner territory where you are no longer ruled by noise, no longer pulled in every direction by other people's moods, no longer trying to earn permission to exist. It is the opposite of the crowd. The crowd is scattered, reactive, hungry, loud. The one country is centered, discerning, quiet, truthful. And when people say this prophecy is only for those chosen with the mark M and crescent moon, the deeper meaning isn't exclusivity as pride. It's recognition of frequency. Not everyone can hear this invitation, because not everyone is bothered by the world the way you are. Think about it. Some people can live for years in constant stimulation and never question it. They can drown their discomfort in entertainment, in gossip, in endless social noise, and call it a life. But the marked ones, those who resonate with that symbol of the M and the crescent, carry a different kind of inner pressure. They can't stay numb for long. Their spirit keeps tugging them back toward truth. Their nervous system gets exhausted in environments that feel false. Their heart feels heavy when connection is shallow. Their body reacts when something is misaligned. That is what makes this prophecy feel personal. It describes a destination you've been craving without having language for it. And here is the part that many people misunderstand. The one country is not a reward for being perfect. It's a refuge for being awake. It's what you find when you stop trading your inner guidance for external approval. It's what opens when you stop forcing yourself to belong to spaces that drain you. It's what becomes visible when you accept that your sensitivity is not weakness, it's an instrument. The one country is the place your soul goes when it finally stops negotiating its own peace. This is also why the idea feels urgent, because when the world intensifies, it becomes harder to live from the outside in. You can feel that already. The atmosphere is heavier, people are more reactive, the noise is more constant, the distractions are more persuasive. And the more the world pulls outward, the more the marked ones feel an inward call, not because they want to hide, but because they need to anchor. The one country is that anchor. It is the internal foundation you build so you can move through the external storm without being swallowed by it. If you've ever wondered why certain seasons of your life felt like you were being pulled away from everything, friendships fading, doors closing, groups no longer fitting, plans collapsing at the last minute, this is where the code starts to reveal itself. What if those weren't random losses? What if they were border crossings? What if life was moving you away from the many countries of scattered identity, the versions of yourself you performed to survive, and guiding you toward the one country where you finally live from one center, one truth, one alignment? Because a person who belongs everywhere often belongs nowhere, but a person who belongs to truth belongs to something unshakable. And that's the core of the prophecy as a warning. The warning isn't something is coming to the world. The warning is, do not let the world pull you out of yourself. Don't let the collective noise colonize your mind. Don't let counterfeit connection turn your compassion into depletion. Don't let fear make you abandon your discernment. Because the one country can't be entered with a scattered spirit. It requires you to become one. One direction, one standard, one inner voice you trust. That's why it feels like it's only for the marked ones, not because others are rejected, but because others are still comfortable being divided inside. So, when you hear Nostradamus' prophecy of the one country, the mature way to interpret it is this. A time comes when the world becomes so noisy that you either become noise yourself, or you choose clarity as your homeland. You either become reactive, or you become anchored. You either keep trying to belong to what is collapsing, or you accept that your soul has been craving a different kind of country all along the country of alignment, where you stop bending, stop shrinking, stop apologizing for needing truth, and start living from the place God has been trying to guide you back to. And in the next part, we go to the heart of it. Why the M and the crescent are linked to this path, why the marked ones recognize the call first, and why your discomfort with the crowd might actually be the clearest evidence that you were never meant to build your life in the wrong land. The reason this message feels so specific is because it speaks to a kind of person the world rarely understands. Not the loudest, not the most popular, Not the most socially effortless, but the most spiritually responsive. The ones who feel the atmosphere of a room before anyone says a word. The ones who can sense when something is off, even when everything looks fine. The ones who walk away from certain environments exhausted, not because they did too much, but because they absorbed too much. And whether you interpret the mark M and crescent moon as something literal on the hands or as a symbol of a spiritual archetype, the pattern is unmistakable. The marked ones recognize the call because their spirit has never been comfortable living in contradiction. For most people, belonging is simple. It's a matter of being accepted, being included, being part of something. But for you, belonging has always been deeper than that. You can be surrounded by people and still feel homeless inside. You can be included and still feel out of place. Because your soul is not craving proximity, it's craving purity. It's craving truth. It's craving an environment where you don't have to dilute yourself just to be tolerated. And that is why, when the world offers you shallow connection, it doesn't satisfy you. It drains you. Because your spirit knows the difference between being around people and being around alignment. This is what makes the one country idea resonate so strongly with the marked ones. It describes the very thing you've been trying to find without knowing how to name it. A place of inner unity, a homeland where you are no longer split between who you are and who you perform, a realm where your sensitivity is not mocked or dismissed, but understood as a gift, a space where your nervous system can finally rest because it isn't constantly bracing against misalignment. That is why you recognize this message before others do, not because you're gullible, but because you're already tired of living in spiritual exile. And if you look back over your life, you can see how this recognition was built. You didn't wake up one day and become sensitive. You were sensitive early. You were the one who noticed emotional undercurrents when others were laughing. You were the one who sensed dishonesty without proof. You were the one who felt heavy after being around certain people and couldn't explain why. You were the one who needed solitude not as a mood, but as recovery. And you probably spent years trying to fix it. Trying to become less affected, trying to be easier, trying to be simpler. But the truth is, you were never meant to become numb. You were meant to become discerning. That discernment is exactly what makes the marked ones recognize one country as more than an idea. Because when you are discerning, you start noticing that the world is full of divided spaces, places where people smile while hiding resentment, where conversations are polite but hollow, where connection is constant but intimacy is rare, where community is built on performance instead of truth. Those are many countries, many territories of confusion, many lands of divided identity, and the marked ones cannot thrive there. They can visit, they can endure, but they can't build their life there without paying a price. So, life begins to move you, sometimes gently, sometimes painfully. Doors close, bonds fade, plans fall apart, and it's easy to interpret that as rejection. But in the deeper framework of this prophecy, it can be understood differently. You were being relocated, not physically, but spiritually, moved away from environments that would keep you scattered, toward an inner land where you become one. Because a chosen one can't fulfill their purpose with a divided spirit. And if your calling is real, if you are meant to carry clarity, break cycles, awaken others, bring light into spaces that are heavy, then your inner unity has to be protected. This is why the M and the crescent symbolize more than identity. They symbolize a kind of spiritual responsibility. They represent a soul that is tuned to warning signals. A soul that can't ignore discomfort because discomfort is information. A soul that feels drained in the crowd because the crowd carries too much noise. A soul that is repeatedly separated because separation is how the gift stays clean. And yes, that separation can hurt. It can feel unfair. It can make you question yourself. But it also keeps you from being spiritually blended into a life that would erase your discernment. This is also why the prophecy is described as only for the marked. Because without sensitivity, the call doesn't feel urgent. Without discernment, the one country sounds abstract. Without inner pressure, people don't understand why you would choose clarity over entertainment, silence over stimulation, truth over fitting in. But you understand because you've lived the consequence of not choosing it. You've lived what happens when you stay too long in misaligned spaces. You've felt the fog. You've felt the depletion. You've felt the loss of yourself. And you've also felt the relief when you return to solitude, when you return to stillness, when you return to your center. That relief is a clue. It is your spirit telling you where home actually is. So if this message feels personal, it's because it is. The marked ones don't recognize this prophecy through curiosity. They recognize it through memory. Their life has been a series of signs pointing them away from false belonging and toward true alignment. And what one country represents is the end of spiritual homelessness. It represents a season where you stop trying to live everywhere and finally live from one place, your center, your truth, your calling. In the next part, we're going to talk about how you actually enter that country, not with imagination, but with alignment. How you protect your energy without becoming cold. How you move with purpose without isolating in fear. How you build inner unity so strong that the noise of the world can't pull you apart again. If the one country is real in the way we've been decoding it, then entering it isn't about travel. It's about transition. It's not about changing your address. It's about changing your allegiance. Because most people live as citizens of whatever is loudest, whatever demands their attention, whatever triggers their emotions, whatever offers quick comfort, whatever promises belonging. And the marked ones, the ones who carry the M and the Crescent, eventually reach a point where they can't live like that anymore. Their spirit refuses to be governed by the crowd. Their nervous system refuses to be used as a dumping ground. Their inner world refuses to keep paying the price for external noise. That refusal is the beginning of the crossing. So the first step into the one country is simple, but it is a decision that changes everything. You stop treating your inner peace as optional. You stop calling your need for silence strange. You stop apologizing for being affected. You recognize that your sensitivity is part of your design, and a designed instrument must be cared for. If you are permeable, you must be protective. If you absorb, you must cleanse. If you feel deeply, you must live deliberately. The one country isn't entered by intensity, it's entered by alignment. This means you become disciplined with what enters you. Not in fear, but in wisdom. You stop feeding your spirit with noise and calling it normal life. You stop consuming constant opinions and wondering why you feel confused. You stop letting heavy atmosphere sit in your body and calling it just stress. You start recognizing that your mind is a gate and your attention is a currency. Every time you pay attention to something, you are giving it permission to shape you. And the chosen can't afford to be shaped by anything. Your inner world must be shaped by truth. Then you begin to simplify your life, not because you're running away, but because you're returning to your center, returning to God. Returning to the part of you that feels clean and clear when nobody is pulling at you. You start building quiet into your days on purpose. You stop filling every silence with stimulation. You stop turning your phone into an emotional pacifier. You create space for your spirit to speak again. Because the reason many chosen ones feel lost is not because their purpose isn't there. It's because the noise has made the purpose hard to hear. Silence does not create your calling. Silence reveals it. Now, entering the one country also changes how you handle people. You begin to understand that kindness without boundaries is not holiness, it is self-abandonment. The marked ones often attract people who feel your light, and not all of them come with pure intention. Some come because they want to heal. Some come because they want to use you. And you stop being ashamed of that truth. You stop calling it being judgmental when you feel heaviness around someone. You stop overriding your discernment out of politeness. You start choosing access carefully, because access is influence. Whoever has access to you gets to affect your frequency, and your frequency is the foundation of your clarity. So you learn to say no without guilt. You learn to leave early without drama. You learn to protect your energy without explaining it to people who only want access, not understanding. You stop giving endless chances to patterns that keep draining you. You stop trying to rescue people who refuse responsibility. You love, but you don't attach. You care, but you don't carry what isn't yours. That's not cruelty. That's maturity. And maturity is what keeps the chosen from being spiritually scattered. This is where the one country becomes tangible. You start noticing that you feel at home, not in a location, but in a state of being. You feel home when your spirit is clean. You feel home when your mind is quiet. You feel home when your boundaries are respected. You feel home when your connection to God is honest and steady. You feel home when your life is not built around performance. And once you taste that, you stop romanticizing what used to drain you. You stop chasing crowds that cost you peace. You stop calling chaos excitement. You stop confusing constant connection with belonging. Because the one country teaches you what real belonging actually is: alignment with truth. And there is one more part of entering this country that people rarely talk about because it's not dramatic, but it's powerful. You begin to move with purpose, not pressure. You stop rushing to prove you're chosen. You stop needing other people to validate your path. You stop broadcasting your growth for applause. You become quieter, but stronger. Clearer, but less performative. You start trusting timing. You start recognizing when a door is meant to open and when it's meant to remain closed. You stop forcing what isn't flowing. You stop calling delay failure. You understand that positioning often looks like waiting, and refinement often looks like solitude. But you don't resent it anymore, because you know what it's doing. It's relocating you internally. That's why the prophecy is a warning and an invitation at the same time. The warning is that the world will try to recruit you back into noise. The invitation is that you don't have to live there anymore. You can live in one place, spiritually. You can become one, inside one direction, one standard, one voice you trust. And when you live that way, you become harder to manipulate, harder to drain, harder to confuse. Because confusion needs internal division to survive. When you become internally united, confusion loses its grip. In the conclusion, we're going to seal this into the deepest comfort of all. You were never meant to be spiritually homeless. You were always being led. Your sensitivity was always a compass. Your separations were always border crossings. And what you've been longing for has been calling you home the whole time. If you've listened this far, then you already know what makes this different from a normal message. It didn't just give you an idea to think about. It touched something you've been living. Because for a long time, you've been carrying a quiet contradiction inside you. You can function in the world, but you don't feel nourished by it. You can be surrounded, but still feel alone. You can be included, but still feel out of place. And the most painful part is not the loneliness itself, it's the question that follows it. The question you may have asked in silence more times than you can count. Why do I feel like I'm always searching for a home that no one else seems to need? Now you have an answer that doesn't insult you. You were never spiritually homeless because you were broken. You were spiritually homeless because your soul refused to settle in the wrong land. That's why crowds drain you. That's why shallow connection feels like hunger. That's why certain environments feel heavy, even when nothing bad is happening. Your spirit can sense misalignment the way a healthy body senses smoke. And every time you tried to override that signal, every time you forced yourself to stay, to fit, to perform, to tolerate your inner world, paid the price. You left those spaces tired in a way rest couldn't fix, because it wasn't physical exhaustion. It was spiritual friction. It was your energy rubbing against a frequency that wasn't yours. So, when we talk about Nostradamus' prophecy of the one country, the real revelation isn't a location. The revelation is identity. The one country is the name for the place your soul has been craving all along. Not a nation on a map, but a home inside yourself, where you are no longer divided. A place where you stop living in fragments, one version of you for the crowd, another version of you for survival, another version of you for approval. The one country is what happens when you return to one center, one truth, one alignment, one inner voice that you finally trust again. And that is why this message is described as only for the marked. Not because others are rejected, but because most people can live scattered and still call it fine. You can't. Something in you won't let you. Whether you interpret the Mark M and Crescent moon as literal signs or spiritual symbolism, it points to the same pattern: sensitivity, discernment, and separation. You are the kind of person whose spirit doesn't cooperate with denial. You notice what others ignore. You feel what others numb. You sense what is underneath. And yes, that can feel like a burden in a loud world, but it is also the very gift that keeps you from building your life on something false. This is where you get to rewrite your past without changing a single fact. The seasons of separation were not always rejection. Many of them were border crossings. The friendships that faded were not always punishment. Many of them were filtration. The doors that closed weren't always failure. Many of them were protection. The moments you felt left out weren't always evidence that you were unworthy. Often they were evidence that you were being spared. Because if your calling is to stay clear, then your inner world must remain clean. And heaven's protection isn't always gentle. Sometimes it looks like removal. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like a loneliness that forces you to stop relying on the crowd for identity and start building an inner foundation that no one can take from you. That's why this prophecy isn't here to scare you. It's here to end the confusion. It's here to show you that your craving for solitude was not laziness, and your discomfort with noise was not weakness. It was your spirit trying to preserve what is sacred. It was your soul refusing to be colonized by the world's chaos. It was the quiet insistence of truth inside you saying, "Do not settle here. This is not your home." And here's the part that changes what happens next. Once you understand this, you stop chasing home outside yourself. You stop begging rooms to feel safe when they never will. You stop forcing people to understand you when they don't have the sensitivity to. You stop calling depletion love. You stop negotiating your peace for acceptance. And you begin living like someone who finally knows what country they belong to, because the one country is not something you enter one day when life is perfect. It's something you enter every time you choose alignment over noise, every time you honor your inner warning instead of overruling it, every time you step away from what drains you without guilt, every time you protect your attention like it's sacred, every time you return to stillness and feel your spirit breathe again. That's the crossing. That's citizenship. It's not announced to the world. It's lived in silence. And the world may never applaud it, but your soul will. So if you've been waiting for permission to be who you are, let this be it. You don't need to be louder to be real. You don't need to be everywhere to be valuable. You don't need to explain your sensitivity to people who profit from misunderstanding you. You simply need to stop betraying what you already know. Your intuition has been speaking. Your body has been warning. Your spirit has been pulling you back toward clarity. This wasn't random. It was guidance. It was the call home. And if you're wondering what happens after you come home, that's where the next part of this journey begins. Because entering the one country is not the end, it's the beginning of a different way of living. A way where your energy stops leaking into places that can't hold it. A way where your relationships become fewer, but cleaner. A way where your path becomes narrower, but steadier. A way where you don't need the crowd to confirm your worth because you finally feel anchored in something higher than opinion. So don't rush past this moment like it was just another video. Let it settle. Let it reorder you. Let it clarify what you will no longer tolerate and what you are finally ready to protect. And if you want to keep walking this path with guidance that stays focused on clarity, not noise, then keep this channel close. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because we're going deeper into how the marked ones protect their energy, recognize divine timing, and build a life that feels like home from the inside out.